I have to admit that Dredd has been one of my most anticipated films of this year. I was really excited to see Dredd, and I've not actually reviewed it until now because I've been really busy with my horror movie videos that I've been doing, but essentially Dredd is Hollywood's second attempt at making a Judge Dredd movie. They originally tried it with Danny Cannon and Sylvester Stallone in the 90s. A movie that I used to love as a child, which I haven't seen since, and I'm sure that if I watched it now I'd probably feel a little bit differently about it, but Dredd, the new film, is basically written by Alex Garland. It's directed by Pete Travis. It's starring Karl Urban, who is one of my kind of favourite up-and-coming actors at the moment. It stars Karl Urban as Dredd, and it's a much more sort of lo-fi, low-key sort of take on Dredd. It doesn't have a massive budget, so it's a much more sort of more compact, smaller action movie. Now, Dredd, going in, saw the trailer for this and was a little bit worried because it looked almost identical to a film that came out this year, and we all know the comparisons, but The Raid. Now, you have to remember that Dredd has been in development for a lot longer than The Raid was, so essentially, you know, who's copying who? Is it actually copying? Who cares? So I just wanted to acknowledge that, but I'm not going to be talking about The Raid comparisons from this point on because Dredd is its own beast and I want to talk about that. So basically the plot follows Dredd. He's also got a rookie partner with him, played by Olivia Thirlby, a partner called Anderson, who is also a psychic. They attend a tower block in order to investigate a murder scene, get locked in, and then the boss of the tower block, played by Lena Headey, I believe is how you pronounce her name, basically orders them to be killed. Now, essentially, that's the very kind of basic plot. It's a film that really doesn't have a massive plot in favour of action. So, you know, going in, I knew what to expect. What I really like about this movie is the simplicity of the plot, because it allows, I don't know why, but for some reason, the best action movies are the simplest. I mean, look at Die Hard, a guy stuck in a skyscraper. Look at Speed, a guy stuck on a bus. You know, look at, I don't know, you know what I mean? You could rattle them off all day. But Dredd is essentially the story of Dredd and Anderson trapped in this tower block where Lena Headey has committed a murder at the beginning. The tower block itself is about 200 stories. It's actually completely self-contained, much like the movie itself. The tower block in which they're trapped is completely self-contained. It locks down with storm shutters and everything, so you cannot get out. So essentially they have to fight the way out, or rather, as Dredd puts it, you know, they have to fight the way to the top, find Lena Headey as the villainess, and either arrest or kill her. There's a lot of interesting aspects to this movie. So essentially, Dredd and Anderson are what are called judges, who are essentially police in this future Mega City 1. They are actually judge, jury and executioner all rolled into one. They will literally confront a criminal on the street, decide whether or not they're guilty, and then perform the sentence, be it an arrest or execution in some cases. Now, what I like about Dredd is that it really kind of plays with that idea. Anderson, being a psychic, is able to determine people's guilt, and when they're confronted with the person responsible for the murders, she reads this person's mind. Dredd asks her, did he do it? Is he guilty? And she says, I'm 99% sure. And Dredd puts his gun away. We can't execute him on 99%. Dredd is by the book. I mean, it's a fascist's wet dream, you know, it's completely sort of fascist and right-wing propaganda, but it's done exceptionally well. So that was an interesting element of it. Another element that I found quite interesting is the casting of Olivia Thirlby. Essentially, she's a very pretty face being thrown into this action movie, but it adds a certain, they actually play with that, and it adds a certain sexual threat, because Dredd essentially says to her, look, if you're captured in here, shoot yourself. Because you'll be raped, beaten, tortured for being an attractive woman, sort of thing. So it adds a very interesting sort of sexual threat to the whole film, and it makes it basically makes the audience invest a little more in these characters. You know, you want them to get out. And along with that is they basically introduce the plot point that Olivia Thirlby can't wear a helmet because it interferes with her psychic abilities, but Dredd always keeps his on. That was a criticism of the original Danny Cannon film. And the fact that she takes her helmet off, you know, we are able to see her face, and it gives us something to latch onto as the audience, somebody to identify with. So that was a nice, interesting little plot device that they use. Lena Headey as the villainess is fairly brilliant, I found. I think she's menacing when she needs to be. She brings a certain sort of presence to the film. It's hard to explain, but she is quite menacing and threatening, so I thought she was really good in this. The action itself is great. It's, for the most part, practical effects. The budget really, you know, would only allow for practical effects, but it looks better. It's very much in the style of sort of maybe 80s and early 90s self-contained small action films. I would certainly say it's evoking that sort of style, and is all the better for it. I really enjoyed the action scenes in this, and that brings me on to the use of 3D, because I believe this film was released in 3D almost everywhere. Like, you couldn't find a 2D showing of it anywhere. And the 3D is used to great effect. Now, I'm one of the people who thinks 3D is a gimmick, it should go away, it should go die in a hole. But the 3D in this was actually very well used. They essentially used the 3D to help map an environment. So during a gunfight, or just before a gunfight is going to start, they'll use the shots of 3D to really determine where the characters are in relation to each other, and to help basically determine the layout of the room that they're in. And it makes it so that when the action kicks off, the audience isn't completely lost. You know, we have a kind of knowledge and perspective on the action that we wouldn't have had it been shot in 2D. So that element that it adds to the film, you know, I found to be very interesting. It also, the effects in this, as far as the gore goes, this is an ultra-violent movie. Like, some of the violence in this, you have to wonder how they got it past the BBFC. But it is, I think, how it gets away with it is the fact that it's very comic booky and over the top, but it is sort of realistic at the same time, if that makes sense. It's very violent, quite hard to watch at times. Noticed a lot of people in the audience were watching it through the fingers, let's put it that way. So it doesn't, for gorehounds out there, it doesn't skimp on gore, which I know a lot of people will love. I just loved how over the top it was. I thought it was a great movie. Karl Urban is great in this. You could probably, I don't know how long his script would have been, but he doesn't say a lot. He acts through his helmet and essentially has his presence as Dredd. He's brilliant. He's a much better Dredd than Sylvester Stallone was. And also they hint at things in, you know, within Dredd's sort of personality that they may flesh out in a sequel as well. But again, this film is intended to be a franchise starter, but they don't overload it with sequel bait. There is a couple of lines at the beginning and at the end. There's a couple of lines of dialogue that hint of a future plot line. But that's it. That's all they do. They don't overload it with sequel bait, which I was worried that they would, because looking at a film like The Amazing Spider-Man, which was basically an extended trailer for the franchise, I hated that movie. I was a little bit worried that this film would do the same, but no, it doesn't. They managed to make a self-contained, well-rounded, fully fleshed out action movie with a hint of sequel bait, which is how it should be done. So I really enjoyed this movie. I loved it, in fact, and it'll most likely be on my top 10 of the year. Dredd is a very rewarding film. For anybody who grew up watching sort of 80s and 90s action B-movies, you know, you'll get a lot from it. It echoes those movies to a great extent. It's peppered with interesting ideas. The universe in which it's set is... You know, they hint at aspects of this society in which the characters are living without going too much into it because of the runtime and the budget. But it gives you enough to add a certain undercurrent and certain layers to this movie that you wouldn't get in, say, a Jason Statham action film. So it does really kind of hint at a much wider picture, which... with any luck it'll get a sequel. I guess that'll depend on how it does on DVD and Blu-ray. I believe it was a success here in England, but it bombed in America, probably due to the non-existent marketing campaign. But Dredd, I loved it, and I would highly recommend it. It's great. For anybody who's got a hankering for a sort of quick, dirty, shallow action movie, but with, you know, very interesting sci-fi elements, you know, I would certainly check this out. So that's Dredd, highly recommended, and thank you for watching. Please rate, comment and subscribe. See you later.